Retro or die.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when you want to play a good action game on the PlayStation 2 that leaves you feeling like an unstoppable badass that can turn your enemies into blood smoothies at a moment's notice? Of course, God of War and Devil May Cry are the obvious answer. These two games set up the perfect formula of how to handle an action-adventure game with over-the-top violence and godlike characters. So, how could anything possibly go wrong with a game based around the ex-leader of Hell's army, fighting through demons and angels in order to save the world? This is Spawn Armageddon. The year is 1992. Coming off his successful career at Marvel, working on Spider-Man and creating one of the most famous Marvel villains, Venom, Todd McFarlane would found his own comic book publishing company, Image Comics. Simultaneously, McFarlane released his brand new comic book character and series onto the world, Spawn. By the end of 1992, Spawn was one of the most popular and highest grossing comics, selling 1.7 million copies on issue number 1 alone. After this, McFarlane and Spawn would see massive success and be marketed everywhere.
I'm Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn. And to me, there's nothing out there in life that is all black or all white. Good always has a germ of evil inside it, and evil just a touch of good. Take Spawn. An assassin in life, Hell's own soldier in death, not exactly Boy Scout material.
And despite being an adult-oriented comic, Spawn would be hugely popular in the toy industry with kids.
Exploding from the pages of Spawn, America's #1 comic book. Spawn Ultra Action figures, blasting into combat with their mortal enemies. Spawnmobile versus Violator Monster Rig. Menacing Clown, Chapel, Badrock fights back. You can control the action in Spawn Alley with all of the Spawn Ultra Action figures. Figures, playsets, and vehicles, each sold separately. Spawn from Irwin.
Spawn's popularity was so massive that within 6 years of its release, he was the third comic book character to get a major motion picture, which at that time had only been done for the top tier echelon of comic book characters who had been around for much longer. But after the movie flopped at the box office, and like anything that is massively produced, Spawn's popularity seemed to nosedive by the early 2000s. And as Todd McFarlane took more of a back seat in Spawn comics to focus on other ventures, it seemed that Spawn days to shine were over.
What the hell are you?
And with games like this, it didn't help bring Spawn back from the pits of financial hell. Spawn Armageddon is an action platform game developed by Point of View Games and published by Namco in 2003. The plot of the game is supposedly based around Spawn comic issues 1 through 99. But I can confidently say I don't ever remember Spawn fighting creatures from the Virus movie. And the imps from Doom. It's an extremely lazy plot that feels like a middle school student would laugh at. Spawn is alerted that Heaven has a super weapon and has made some sort of hole in the earth, and demons are now attacking. It's up to him to find out why this is happening, but not everything is what it seems to be. Spawn will need to seek guidance from Malbosia and stop this super weapon before it causes any more havoc. It was like the developers of the game never read a Spawn comic in their lives, and Namco and McFarlane just ignored this and said, "Hey, you know that one game with the angry god who kills shit? Make it like that with some monsters and angels." First of all, Spawn would never seek help from Malbosia. And yes, in the comics, Heaven is just as bad as Hell. But Spawn's whole goal is to kill Malboja for his lies and trickery. Then, in the game, when you come face to face with him, Spawn acts like an annoyed teenager asking for advice from his parents.
Are you ready to take your place at the head of my army? I'm not staying.
I'm an emo kid, non-conforming as can be. You be non-conforming too if you look just like me.
Oh, yes, you are.
The gameplay is some of the most aggravating and repetitive crap I've played in a long time. Levels are set up much like Evil Dead Regeneration, another game I hated, where levels are broken up room to room with invisible walls. Kill a certain amount of enemies, and then repeat. Spawn's hell powers and axe do diddly squat to enemies, and the main focus being on guns also feels very underpowered, especially when most of the enemies are bulletproof. So this leaves you in a never-ending grinding cycle on enemies who seem to be sponges for damage.
Please, Malboja, no!
Not only is the gameplay for battle horribly boring, but the other main staple being platforming is beyond bad. You will find yourself fighting the camera as it follows Spawn around while it gets stuck on walls and not giving you a clear sight of view 95% of the time. Last but not least is the game's horrific and confusing checkpoint system. Levels can be 20 to 35 minutes long, and if you get killed, you're forced to start it all over again. Normally, that wouldn't be an issue for me if it wasn't for the mindless grinding I'd mentioned earlier. But to give a cherry on top of the shit sundae, the game has a tendency to freeze if there's too much action going on at once. And I have even had the game lock me out of progressing by trapping me in a room with no escape, hence losing the last 20 minutes of painful gameplay. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give Spawn Armageddon a 2.
Bad, Crispy! Bad, Crispy! Cloud not like!
I had high hopes for this game when I first fired it up. The CGI cutscenes were amazing. Having the same voice actor from the Spawn HBO series reprise his role gave me no reason to think that this game was going to suck as hard as it does. I loved Spawn growing up. My dad, who was an avid collector of the comic and merchandise, got me into it. And those were some of the most fondest memories I had as a kid, going into comic book stores, and then finally seeing the movie when it came out. And to see not only this game, but all of the Spawn games suck as bad as they do is a very sad thing. I don't know what the future holds for Spawn, and with the recent news of trouble going on with Todd McFarlane's new attempt at a Spawn movie, is not looking good. But in the next video, we're going to travel back to 1997 and take a look back at the nostalgia-fueled nightmare, which is Spawn the movie. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next game review.